Alright, Manic Mercurian here, back once again, and today we have another birth chart reading. This one is for Saturday, March 22nd, 1997 at 5:32 a.m. in Webster, Texas. And you have Sun in Aries, Moon in Virgo, Pisces rising. Now, the first thing I want to say is if you probably know a little bit about your sun sign, you are in Aries. But if you do know about that, I would almost just say to forget about it, just because you, I doubt you would really strongly relate to a lot of Aries archetypes or Aries themes. Um, the reason why I say that is, you do have Sun and Mercury in Aries, so you're definitely in Aries. You would have some of those classic traits. You might be outgoing at times, confident, impulsive, maybe a little bit self-centered, outgoing, very focused on your desires. Those things may be true for you in some circumstances, but you have a lot in your chart that's based on Virgo as well as Pisces that would really change things here. So the moon is of course your core identity and your emotions, and being in Virgo conjunct the descendant, it makes you very humble, it makes you very detail oriented. It would mean that you would think before you act. Now all of this is very unusual for an Aries sun. It would also make you very focused on other people, very empathetic, and it means that your core identity is on many levels based on other people. It's like you almost need to be around other people to even know who you are, to have an identity. And this is at a very core level. So I think it's very important to you to have really strong relationships, decent relationships, because your relationships define who you are. And of course, that applies to all of us on some level, but this is especially true for you. This is very true for you that I don't know, you gauge how to be based on who you're with. And you're actually very adaptable. And again, everything I'm saying is very unusual for an Aries. So that's why I say, you're definitely not the typical Aries. Let's see here. One other thing that I want to mention, so you have Saturn in Aries. Now, this is another Aries placement, so you think it would make you more embody the Aries archetype, but it actually doesn't, at least not at an early age. And the reason why is because the subgeneration of people born with Saturn and Aries, you are very hard on yourselves, especially at a young age. This could be very challenging. I think it's one of the most challenging placements for Saturn. Saturn is in fall in Aries, so it is challenging, and it takes time to develop. So basically, how this goes typically, I mean, of course, it's up to you. You have free will, but generally speaking, this is how it goes: that you start out life very hard on yourself. This can lead to depression. It can lead to low self-esteem. Like I said, it could be very challenging early on. But you are a late bloomer, I would say, especially with your Virgo moon and your Saturn in Aries. It takes time for you. It takes time. And as you approach age 28, 29, 30, you'll make a lot of progress in this area, and you'll gradually learn to rise to the very high standards that you set for yourself. Initially that will be a challenge, but it becomes a strength. This is a great placement to have in the long run because, you will live up to your own standards in time. It just takes time. Early on, you might not feel like you live up to your own standards. You might hate yourself. Like, I won't sugarcoat it. I've seen that in people, and it's like I said. I'll say it over and over again. It's very, very difficult because you feel like this extra weight on your self-expression and your identity. Again, especially at a young age. But yeah, this is just something that you really. It takes time to move into this and to really embody this and to step up to the plate. And really, again, you're the one judging yourself. You're your most the hardest critic, I guess. I mean, a lot of what I'm saying is almost reminiscent of Capricorn, just because you have a lot of very Saturnian energies affecting your personality. So Saturn does, it is a very challenging energy, but it asks us to be better, and so that's why it's also a strong placement for you. That if you can give it time and learn to live up to your own high expectations, you will be. I don't even know how to say it. Like, you'll be that much better of a human. Basically, you'll be that much stronger, wiser, more intelligent, having that wisdom and such. So it just takes time. I'm also noticing you have your South Node at the very end of Pisces. conjunct Venus. Okay, so I've already touched on Virgo and Aries. I want to get into the third main sign that your personality is based on because your personality is very heavily based in Virgo, Aries, and Pisces. I've already talked a little bit about two of those, so let's go to Pisces. Now, you do have your ascendant in Pisces, of course, and you also have, like I just said, your South Node conjunct Venus. Excuse me. Okay, so this is another placement. I didn't even realize just till now that your South Node was in Pisces, but this is another placement that's indicative of very almost anti-Aries traits. Like, um, because South Node is where you come from. It's your identity of where you start from, I guess, in life, or a lot of people say it's your past lives. And being at the very end of Pisces is very karmic. So this is indicating that in past lives you may have been like a spiritual guru of some sort, or you may have been like a traveler, or someone who could access many different realms of existence, many different mindsets, many different ways of being, someone who had a lot of wisdom. So coming into this life, you would be, the end of Pisces in general, and also especially the end of Pisces, has this sort of unique combination of wisdom with naivete. And having your South Node in Pisces and your Pisces rising, you would be very wise, but also a little bit naive. Your Virgo Moon also would make you kind of intelligent, analytical, think before you act. You'd want to quantify things and measure things, be very observant. So these two things combining, you do have a lot of like wisdom and like you think before you act. Again, much more so than a typical Aries would. You're not. To me, this chart doesn't seem like a person who is super impulsive and just spontaneous and happy-go-lucky, just doing whatever they're thinking in the current moment. I think you really do think a lot before you take action, or you're a very thoughtful person. You are a very deliberate, careful person. And your South Node in Pisces actually reflects that as well. So that the South Node and the Ascendant there can indicate a sort of lack of structure. Now, the Moon in Virgo would help this. You're very emotionally grounded. You almost analyze your emotions, like you um, turn them into logic. You you analyze them away, or you want to like measure and quantify and control your emotions. That's sort of how you react emotionally. It's almost like you have a brain where your heart would be, if that makes sense. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. Um, but having South Node in Pisces, it does indicate a lack of structure, especially at a young age. That um, maybe you're definitely a very sensitive person, um, and South Node conjunct Venus indicates that you would be very Venusian at a young age, and Venus is exalted in your chart, so it's very strong. So what does that mean? So embodying the traits of Venus, especially at a young age, it would make you very empathetic, very easygoing, and easy to be around. Very pleasant. You'd have a pleasant demeanor. People would enjoy your company. You'd be easy to relate to and get along with. There's something attractive about you, and that may be physical, but also it may just be your demeanor is attractive for you to be around. And usually people with Venus strong like this are um, just sort of naturally charismatic in a way that's not overbearing at all. It's just very kind of sweet and easygoing, or it would make you very receptive to other people. So you have this, and I think with you do have this little dash of like Aries charisma as well, which is a little bit more fiery and outgoing. So I think although you are a very modest, humble person, you do have that little flair and that little fire to you. You have that charisma about you. So I think you are very likable. I think sometimes it's hard for people to reach you because you have most of your planets below the horizon here. So when you were born, the sun hadn't yet risen. There may have been some light like gleaming on the eastern horizon, but the sun hadn't risen. The moon was just setting, and there were no visible planets in the sky whatsoever, except Mars was just setting and Jupiter had just risen. So anyway, so what that means is most of your personality is submerged. So I think you do have this kind of easygoing um, charisma about you. People find you easy to be around, but at the same time, I think you are kind of obscured. Like people don't really always access you. You're not always. like you're pleasant to be around. You're really easygoing and nice and polite, but people don't always find you the easiest to access. And I think part of this is your Virgo moon. Um, you have you're very analytical. You're thinking a lot, and I think a lot of times um, it might be hard for you to articulate everything that you're thinking all the time. You do have Mercury in Aries, so I think you are very confident in your thinking. Uh, so, you are hard on yourself and can question things a lot, but at the same time, you do have uh, Moon in Virgo and then Mercury in Aries. So I think there is this connection between Aries and Virgo in your chart where you are very confident in your thinking. So once you've made up your mind, you could be a little bit stubborn about that. You're definitely confident you have the right answer. And to be honest, it's probably because you do. You do have that intellectual, intelligent mind with your Virgo moon. And so if you are confident in your answer, it's probably because you're actually right. So there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But Mercury in Aries, um, I will say that you might be a little bit headstrong in some ways, which is, I know that's kind of contradictory because you are very humble and you're always, very receptive and focused on others. Um, but I think deep down inside, you actually are very, very confident in your thinking. Like, you think things through and you know that, and you have Saturn conjunct your Mercury as well. So you think things through very much so, and you're very methodical. And so you won't make that extra step in your thinking until you are very sure. Like it's like there's this process to everything, to your analysis, if you will. So I think that would make you stubborn, but it's only because you know, like whatever you figured out, you know that is true because you have this really really excellent process to your analysis. Not saying you're never wrong or that you know everything, but yeah, you have this sort of righteous confidence in your thinking. So that's actually a good thing, I think. Okay, and also just to expand on that a little bit too. So this would almost make you like a good journalist or like researcher or good at figuring things out because, um, again, you're very not only confident in your thinking and eager to explore your thinking, eager to reach out to people or places where you can get information. You're excited about new things, new information, but also you're very um, practical, and it's almost like there's a slowness to not to your thinking, but to your process in reaching a conclusion because you're very thorough. I guess is what I'm trying to say. You're very thorough in your thinking. Okay, and okay, I always ramble during these, but I think I've covered a lot here. So you do have your south node at the end of Pisces, conjunct Venus. So this again, you have multiple placements in your chart that indicate a very empathetic person. And with that high empathy comes a challenge that you might not always have a strong identity because your identity is not as fixed as perhaps that the average Aries. And again, you're very hard on yourself as well, which makes things difficult. Um, so you may kind of value other people more than yourself, or you may be biased to thinking that people are better than you, or um, you may have like low self-esteem, especially early on. But I think these things just take time. With Saturn and Aries, this indicates a very very strong self-esteem. Like a very self-esteem isn't even the right word. This indicates a very strong, healthy ego, but more so later in life. So you would be a leader. You'd be very confident, very outgoing, but only in later in life. And this is because this is something that you have to work for. It's not something that's just gifted that you're born with. I think you start out questioning yourself and not feeling strong in your identity, but it's something that you work for and something that you will perfect and that you will really exemplify this like beautiful, beautiful image of yourself. Once you rise up to these high standards you set for yourself, you'll embody this really, really great role model of sorts, I guess, maybe is what I'm trying to say. It's later in life. It's something you have to kind of work for. It's harder at the beginning. Also, you have North Node at the end of Virgo, so this indicates. Gosh, okay, this is interesting. So, this indicates that you might be a little bit like vain at a young age, which of course aren't we all, but you especially might be a little bit like caught up in things that are not actually of value later on, or they're not practical, pragmatic. You may have escapist tendencies with your Pisces rising and your South Node conjunct Venus in Pisces. The same placement that makes you really kind of pleasant to be around and attractive to be around. It also makes you an escapist, if that makes sense. Like especially at a young age. Um, so you may escape. Common things would be drugs, alcohol. I always say sleeping, or it could just be like video games, or really anything that allows you to kind of just check out. Check out from other people, or from being a person. These things might be extra tempting for you at a young age. Venus being so strong too, Venus can have a tendency to do this as well because it can be kind of covert. It's not always direct, especially in Pisces conjunct your South Node. Um, so I think you're very good at being charming. You're good at being, s- you're good at being sensitive and, um, how do I put this? I think you're really, really comfortable being charming and or escaping from things. You're good at those things. You're good at melting away and you're good at being a chameleon, but these things will all lead to your downfall because they're not good for you in the long run. And this is past life karma. So in your past life, you may have been someone who, again, was maybe very spiritual, or also someone who excelled at like deceiving people or being very charismatic. But so you come into this life, being good at all these things. But again, it's not what you're meant to learn here in this life. You can keep those abilities. I'm not saying to discard those. You have strengths in these areas, but the way your evolution is meant to go in this life is to become actually more practical, more methodical, and more pragmatic, more thinking about other people and reality, being almost a little bit colder and just objective with the facts of reality at hand, if you will. That's generally why you're meant to proceed in this life, I guess. So your chart's interesting because I'm almost getting like a strong picture of you early in life and a strong picture later in life. Early in life, you'd be very charismatic and good at being well received by others. You'd be very empathetic, but you'd also be very unsure of yourself. You'd have almost like low self esteem. A lot of people would say, or um, your self image would be very hard, I guess. But I think later in life, you'd have a very strong sense of identity. You would know exactly who you are because you have worked for this. And you would be much more practical, much more, I think especially that confidence in your thinking. I think that's something that's always going to be there for you, but it's something that will really develop as you get later into life, and it will help to kind of blossom this really strong, practical, confident personality that you'll have more and more, more and more as you mature, basically. Especially once you get into your late 20s here. Okay, I think I've said enough about like general personality. Oh, one quick thing here. So you do have Jupiter in 12th house Aquarius. So this is a really beautiful placement. Jupiter's just rising above the eastern horizon. It's in Aquarius, which is a really nice placement for Jupiter. So you are well received by people, by the community. In public you're well received by people, I think. I think there can be a little bit of mixed energies there with your moon conjunct Virgo, or moon conjunct ascendant in Virgo. You're so sensitive and you pick up on a lot of vibes with people, so you might not always be sure of yourself, or you might think certain things about what people think of you. Um, but you do have this like charisma about you. You have this Venusian energy, and that Aries is very charismatic as well, and then Jupiter's in Aquarius. So I think you actually are really well received by others. But you might overthink that away and not really appreciate it as much as it It really is. You might not realize that, I think. Oh, you also have Midheaven and Sagittarius, so that's also very charismatic placement. So you are very charming. I think it's just interesting because you have this Moon conjunct Ascendant in Virgo, which is kind of an awkward placement, to be honest. It's very intelligent, methodical, practical, but it's a little bit awkward with other people because it's so empathetic and so detail oriented. It's so like sensitive to all these details that it's observing. So that would make you a little bit awkward. Um, Saturn and Aries would make you feel a little bit awkward. But at the same time, you have a lot of placements indicating a really great charisma with people and that you're really well received. You have that Sagittarius midheaven, so you can kind of come off as like cool or relatable, funny, charismatic, etc. Actually, you could be really funny, and that's a good point because Moon and Virgo, you would have those like, that awkwardness can actually be kind of funny, and that attention to detail can be clever. Uh, and then Mercury and Aries, you do think very quickly, and combining that with these kind of approachable and relatable, attractive placements in your chart. So, yeah, I think you could really have a nice like image almost. I get this feeling like you might think that's strange to say because I think you're a very humble person, but I do see that potential for sure. Midheaven and Sagittarius would also indicate a career where you may be traveling a lot or dealing with people of different cultures, different customs, maybe different socioeconomic backgrounds than yourself, or just traveling very far for work, researching like something exotic. You do have this sharp intellect, which I think would be really valuable for a career. Um, Something where you can use your analytical abilities, but again, also something that has to do with being like exotic or traveling to far places. One little thing I'll just throw in here. So this Pisces ascendant also makes you very approachable. People, you feel familiar to people. People feel like they already know you when they first meet you, and people from all different walks of life feel like you're receptive to them and like you understand them. So that's very powerful as well. It's a very powerful placement to have, and it really blends well with these other placements that indicate you are receptive to others and that people enjoy being around you. You have like a marketable personality, as I said in one of my last readings here. Okay, jumping around. I'm jumping around a bit here. You have Icy in Gemini, Moon in Virgo. So your childhood, you may have had a very active imagination, for sure. I think your parents encouraged this. Um, and you were a very creative child, and you had a vivid imagination. Gemini, I see, is known to have lots of imaginary friends at a young age, or to talk to themselves because you're almost like you have this like chatterbox energy as a child, and also this strong imagination. And sometimes you'd feel lonely, so you end up just kind of like inventing friends or talking to yourself. But it turns into the Sagittarius midheaven. So as you mature, that same energy makes you charismatic once you get a little bit older, and it leads you to being able to have like a really strong, relatable, funny, charismatic, entertaining personality once you're older. At work or in public, at school, etc. Sagittarius midheaven is actually pretty ideal because you're not only charismatic and entertaining, funny, cool, etc., but you're also intelligent and like to question things, like to be kind of philosophical or analytical at times, in your career, job, work, school, etc. So that's kind of your reputation. That's what you'd be seen as. And you do have Pluto pretty close to the midheaven, so you'd be seen as someone kind of powerful or mysterious. That's how you would first come off with people. With Pisces ascendant as well, you'd kind of come off as like complex or like interesting. People would sense this kind of like rawness or sincerity with you, so they'd be kind of intrigued by that, I think. Excuse me. Okay, I've covered most of what I want to say here. I haven't covered relationships yet. I haven't talked about much about your Mars either. So first I'll talk about your Mars just in general, then I'll go to relationships. So last person I just did a reading for had Mars in Virgo as well. It indicates someone who is definitely very productive. You're a hard worker, and accomplish large goals by breaking them down. And you do this naturally. You probably don't even think about it, but when you're going to accomplish something or to work at something, you just think about the next step. You think just a couple steps into the future, and you're just accomplishing these small tasks. But this is an excellent way to go about it because it makes large projects not so formidable. You're more than happy to just chip away at these smaller tasks, and pretty soon it adds up to a lot. So this is a really, really beautiful placement. With Mars in the seventh house, you'd be very sensitive toward other people, and I think Mars in Virgo, it's also very sensitive to its surroundings. So, like a cluttered house is very irritating to someone with Mars in Virgo. You'd want to be a little bit organized or tidy, because you are sensitive to your surroundings. A cluttered house would be very, very irritating to you. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but you do have Mars retrograde as well, so I think you might have a hard time asserting yourself at times because your Mars is more internal. I think you have this internal confidence, especially, as you mature, like I was saying earlier, but your confidence is more internal. It's not always expressed really directly or in a really flashy way. It's something smaller, but I want to be careful in how I say that. It's something you express very deliberately in more subtle ways, I guess I could say. You you assert yourself kind of subtly because your confidence again is more internal than it is external. You're not always expressing your confidence or defending yourself in a very outgoing way. It's much more internal. So I think at a young age you might even have a hard time defending yourself in some ways or handling confrontation. Um, you know, and I think when you are confronted with a conflict of some sort or something that puts you in a crisis mode, you'd react by like thinking a lot because your Mars is in Virgo, your Moon is in Virgo. Um, you would react by thinking it through, like by So to me, that indicates someone who wouldn't necessarily panic super easily. It indicates someone whose first instinct would just be to get extremely logical and just think of a solution to the problem, basically. So that's, again, that's an excellent placement. That's a great reaction to have. It's not always the best at defending yourself from like something physical or some like violence or something like that, but it is excellent at figuring out solutions like in a very quick way when you're confronted with a crisis. And again, it's also this placement's also very good for accomplishing large tasks in life, being a good worker just in general. As for your relationships, you have Venus in Pisces, Mars in Virgo, almost exactly opposite Venus. And then you have your descendant in Virgo. And your moon in Virgo too. So the biggest thing here is your descendant. Being a Pisces rising means that you have Virgo descendant, so that would mean you're attracted to Virgo people. You want someone with a Virgo placement. You want someone who makes sense. You want someone intelligent who has strong opinions. You want someone practical, and I think you don't mind someone um, who isn't really outgoing with their emotions. Like Virgo isn't super into like PDA, public displays of affection, or it's not the most romantic sign. It's not the sign that's like into showering you with affection, or I don't know. It's not always the most vocal with its affection, but Virgo does show its affection through acts of acts of service, I guess. It shows its love by being dependable and by being there for you. So it shows its love in kind of a humble way. But I think you would actually very much appreciate this. You want someone consistent who handles their shit basically, who will be there for you, who's not a mess. Someone a little bit structured, someone intelligent, again, like I said, someone analytical. Um, you do have Venus and Pisces, so your approach to love Okay, this is kind of a mixed bag. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so it would indicate you being very desirable. People find you attractive. People want to be in a relationship with you. But it's hard for you because Venus in Pisces is almost like a Jesus placement. It's like you're kind of in love with everyone a little bit. Um, you're a little bit in love with everyone, sort of, or many people. So I think can be hard for you to be consistent with your affection or with a relationship, but you definitely want someone who's consistent, though, maybe more so than yourself. You want that Virgo personality, so someone detail oriented and pragmatic. But you yourself I think you're a little bit of a flirt, maybe. Um, you just like being affectionate with multiple people, maybe, I think. Um, but at the same time, your affection can be very deep. It's not just scattered. It's deep as well. It's spiritual even. So so I think you want someone who is definitely modest and um, intellectual, receptive, intelligent. Maybe someone introverted. Um, someone who questions things. Someone who is focused on learning. Um, someone who's you want someone the person that you are attracted to and that you'd be compatible with would seem weak at times, but they're not truly weak. They are very resilient and adaptable. It's just that they have this sort of softness to them. Like they almost seem delicate. It's this weird combination of delicacy with resilience. They are so strong and so adaptable and so intelligent and wise. This person that that you're meant to be with, um, but they're also very sensitive and almost shy, maybe. They don't show their strength in a very outgoing way. They almost hide it to some extent. Anyway, that's generally the archetype that you're attracted to and that you're meant to be within a long term relationship. But I really want to emphasize the Virgo. You may definitely be attracted to people with maybe Pisces placements, but definitely Virgo placements, or at least some sort of Earth there. So maybe some Capricorn, maybe some Taurus, but especially Virgo, you have an affinity for. One last thing I'll throw in here, and then we'll wrap this up. So you do have Lilith and Leo. So this indicates that you're a little bit confident, like with your sexuality. Um, you have this kind of fire and magnetism to you sexually. It's not something that's always visible or always there, but it's definitely present, I guess, and can be triggered in certain circumstances. But yeah, just generally, Venus and Pisces, Mars and Virgo. I think in relationships you are a little bit humble with your expression. You show your love in very subtle ways, which can be very rewarding and very rich. But they are kind of like subtle, modest ways. So that's kind of neat, I guess. But that's pretty much what I see with your chart. I see someone who is very hard on themselves and very intelligent, takes time to come to conclusions, but once you do, you're very headstrong. You know that's the right answer. Um, yeah, I see a lot of things, but this is a very interesting chart, and I appreciate the the chance to read your chart for you. And if you do have any questions, as always, or anything that you'd like more information on, I'd be happy to answer. But that's pretty much what I see for now. So thanks for this opportunity to do your reading. If anyone else wants a reading, just shoot me an email at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.